Hi. I told you I was new at this, and I really am. We just taped the whole thing, and it didn't tape. So we're starting all over again. Anyway, by now many of you know I'm an alcoholic who's been sober for, well, longer than many of you have even been alive. There's absolutely nothing special about me. I just followed a few simple instructions, and it made me able to stop drinking and no longer crave alcohol. Here's the thing, if you give a lot of thought to how much you're drinking these days, it might be helpful to know that people without a problem don't really worry about how much they're drinking. Also, if you're not sure that you're an alcoholic, but if you give others a damn good impersonation of being one, you may want to stick around a while I tell you lots more about alcoholism, what recovery from it can look like. Go get your coffee. I'll wait for you. Ready? The drug ethanol, found in every alcoholic drink, even beer, has been enjoyed by people for, I guess the guesstimate is around 9,000 years. Some of us enjoyed it far too much, possibly because of a genetic hiccup that predisposed us to become alcoholics. Alcoholics are not bad people, we're sick people. In recovery, we're just sick people trying to get and stay well. And that can be difficult when living in a drinking culture, which unfortunately most of us do. Some of us even live in societies where drinking is celebrated, but sobriety is looked down on. We've all of us, even me, have sometimes thought, oh, that poor so-and-so, he just can't hold his liquor. We may have even said it out loud to others in a tone with real contempt. But once we know a little about alcoholism, we can kind of get rid of those sort of thoughts. And as I've said before, and I will no doubt say again because I'm very old now and I forget stuff, the American Medical Association identified alcoholism as a disease in the 1950s. The founders of Alcoholics Anonymous identified it as such in the 1930s. They called it an allergy. Sickness comes in many shapes and sizes, and all of them have different symptoms. Alcoholism just has some spectacularly ugly ones, making the disease concept very hard to stomach for those who have to deal with us when we're drunk and behaving badly. After all, cancer patients don't hit people. Diabetics seldom destroy the furniture or punch holes in the walls. But a brain inflamed by the drug ethanol does act out in those ways, and many even far worse ways. I've read where alcoholic drinking can actually cause the brain to swell, to puff up. Imagine trying to think clearly and make good decisions with a swollen brain bumping up against the side of your skull. There's an image for you. When sober, most alcoholics are pretty nice people. When drunk, really are not. And when we sober up after being drunk and disorderly, we are riddled with guilt and shame. It often drives us right back to the bottle to help us forget. So what's the answer? Is it willpower? That would be a no. All by itself, willpower is about as effective a cure for alcohol addiction as it is for a case of diarrhea. So, is there a solution? Historically, there was not, until the middle of the 20th century. A diagnosis of alcoholism before that time was virtually a death sentence. Fortunately, today, there are many therapy programs available, both secular and religious programs, and government-run or private. All of them have established track records for helping drunks stay sober. So there's more than one way out, and many that are located near you can easily be found by just having a look online. Check out your search engine. You should also know that, like it or not, the program with the greatest success for getting and keeping drunks sober remains Alcoholics Anonymous. AA has millions of members worldwide, and many of them have lived sober for decades. And because AA members do not break their anonymity at the level of press, radio, or films, you now know why I don't give you my last name in these talks. I once read where the Chinese single written character for alcoholism is lonely man disease. A perfect description. I'd like to add women to it too. Lonely, because in the final stage of the disease of alcoholism, we've generally been cut off from our friends, from our family, from society, either by a condemnation of our behavior from them, from others, or by our own desire to just hole up and drink ourselves to oblivion and not think about the mess we've made of our lives. Lonely. A lonely disease. It gets very lonely toward the end of the alcoholic road. Lonely is a perfect description. And people who stop drinking without having a support system, they can remain lonely. There are such people. I've met 2 of them. Genuine alcoholics who just stopped drinking, period. I couldn't do it without help, and I really, really tried. But they somehow seem to have managed it. Even so, I've noticed that they don't seem very happy after putting the plug in the jug. They remain suspicious of others, and they also stay pretty restless, irritable, and discontented in their lives. They don't drink, but they don't seem to have much joy in their lives either. They have a blast in mine. A huge part of the success rate for alcoholics who remain sober in Alcoholics Anonymous is that once we arrive there, we find our herd. I was astonished at this because I was not then, and I am not now, a joiner. But I felt at home in AA almost immediately. Most alcoholics do, because once they overcome their initial panic and fear of actually having to go to a dreaded first meeting, they find that it's a pretty comfortable place to be. In AA, we find people who think like us, act like us, and who drank like we drank. Friendships are very easily made. We are no longer alone, and the world immediately becomes a much friendlier place. Fear of people, insecurity, timidity, and social and general anxiety are all part of the alcoholic makeup, symptomatic actually. We often drank to either escape or overcome those issues. I know during my drinking years, a few drinks allowed me to socialize, become a wonderful dancer, and otherwise feel a confidence I never felt when I was sober. AA meetings, in addition to our learning from others some of the skills needed to stay sober, also keeps the horrors of alcoholism pretty visible with the arrival of every scared and suffering newcomer. When I see them, I just double down on my own resolve to never experience the dark side of drinking ever again. They heighten my continued commitment to sobriety. I think they do that for all of us in those rooms. And when we in AA talk about some of our drunken misadventures during a meeting, and we sometimes do, newcomers immediately relax because they learn that they're not the only ones who behaved badly while they were drunk. Newcomers also see real quick, and they feel our joy in living a sober life, and they tend to want some of that. They'd like a piece of that. Their life isn't joy. You don't get to AA on a win. Okay, you're not on a winning streak when you get to AA. And so, the newcomer is assured that a better life lies ahead for them too, as long as they stay sober and keep coming back to learn how to stay sober. And AA members like me also receive tremendous support, from my friends in AA for staying sober when times are hard, like family gatherings over the holidays, for instance, or the loss of a job or a death in the family. And even during the happier times, when a toast is called for, like at a wedding or a graduation or a birthday party. All kinds of tips about that I'll be sharing in upcoming videos. I got sober in September, and at my very first meeting, I started to worry about how I would get through Christmas without taking a drink. And I said so. And that was the first time I heard the AA advice to try and live my life one day at a time. I've heard it many times since. Alcoholism is said to be an equal opportunity destroyer. In other words, no race, sex, religion, or profession is free from it. I've been in meetings with musicians, singers, actors, some of them quite famous. They would be names you know. Also with jockeys, doctors, nurses, teachers, college professors, priests, plumbers, sailors, dog groomers, chefs, housewives, athletes. Every branch of the judiciary system, from cops to judges, shop owners, bartenders, pilots, and many more. My AA friendships right now include a couple of retired and 2 practicing nurses, 2 doctors, addictions counselors, a retired New York City Fire Department lieutenant, a linguist, a very successful building contractor, some students, a cat breeder, the retired owner of a chemical company, social workers, a minister, a priest, and a bunch of other lovely people, and I have no idea what they do for a living. Just didn't need to talk about it. Here's the bottom line. If you think you have a problem with alcohol, you maybe do. AA is filled with people you might enjoy getting to know. And if you don't choose AA, there are other venues you can go to get sober. If you think you might have a problem with alcohol, please find help somewhere. Continuing to drink only guarantees your life is going to get worse. That's because alcoholism is a progressive disease, and once an alcoholic's drinking escalates from now and then to day-long binges, or eventually to daily drinking, it doesn't shift into reverse. Or, as I've heard said in meetings, once a cucumber has been soaked enough to become a pickle, it can never be turned back into a plain cucumber. My next video will offer still more about getting and staying sober. Until then, remember this: every recovery from alcoholism begins with 1 sober hour. If you want to, if you need to, you can do this. Keep sober.